premier video show where we share the success journeys of the elite and learn about the pivotal moments and decisions that shaped their paths to prominence. I'm your host, Nancy Erickson. I work with high net worth individuals, CEOs, and business leaders, and I give them a white glove, really hands on experience to write, edit, publish, market, and distribute their books worldwide. I'm the owner of Stonebrook Publishing, an award winning publishing house that publishes nonfiction works. So today, my esteemed guest is Dr. Harvey Castro. With over 20 years as a physician, entrepreneur, and former CEO of a healthcare system, Dr. Castro has made significant strides in healthcare management. He collaborates with physicians in integrating advanced healthcare management practices. This is why I invited him to be my guest. Currently, he's at the forefront of healthcare's AI revolution and serves as a strategic advisor for GPT and healthcare. He aims to integrate healthcare professionals, AI developers, and pioneering AI technologies seamlessly. Welcome, Dr. Castro.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun for me, so I
Yeah,
appreciate your time.
no, I'm so excited to hear because we've been connected on LinkedIn for a while, and I'm just always curious to dive in further to what you're actually doing in AI and healthcare. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we get to that point, tell us a bit about your growing up years. Now, where are you from? What was your family life like?
Yeah, I'm from New York City. I'm the first generation American. Basically, was blessed in that I got to grow up in a melting pot that really gave me a good insight to just the different populations and ages and ethics and all sorts of stuff growing up in New York City. I remember going to my friends' houses and everybody was from a different part of the world, and I'd get to enjoy different cultures. So that really helped me become a better physician.
Yeah. So, so I know you live in Dallas now. So, what happened between like you're a medical doctor, an MD, and so how did you get into medicine?
Yeah, ironically, I had a horrible experience as a child. I had a really bad laceration of my left hand, and I had my first big experience in the emergency room was horrible. There was no anesthesia. I was waiting probably over 12 hours to be seen, and then when I was seen, I didn't feel like I got a great care. And fast forward, that really just gave me this feeling of I need to help people. I need to be that light, that physician that cares, that empathy, that different person. And literally, I told myself, I want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And since that point, my first job was at a health food store and just learning alternative medicine and just kind of knowing the why and how this works. I was like, I need to know more. I need to be a doctor.
Yeah. So, tell us about your path to becoming a doctor.
It was tough. Being the first generation American, first college student, I really didn't have
Wow.
a mentor.
Yeah.
And my mom had me as a teenager, so she was really focused on me becoming educated. But it was really hard because I would ask her for help, and she really couldn't help me with some of the things I was doing. And so the other part was the financial. I really had no way to afford college. So I joined the U.S. Forces. I was in the
Oh,
Army to help me with
great.
college. So that was really, really helpful for me. And I think it was a blessing in that it made me think outside the box. At age 16, I had my first business and I was able to afford my insurance, my car. In fact, I remember giving my mom money for bills. And it just really helped
Okay, you
me
have to tell us what
think outside the
that teenage business was.
this is kind of funny. I was stocking my first real job was at a health food store, and I was stocking the vitamins, and I was looking at the invoices, and it said, "Hey, if you buy more of the pills or the bottles, you'll get a discount." And at that age, I was pretty cocky. I went to my boss and said, "Hey, if I'm able to sell more of these bottles outside of the business, can I get a discount? And if I get a discount, can I create my business doing this?" And he was like, "Yeah, if you can get me to these levels, then I will cut you into those discounts. Plus, I'll give you a discount so that way you can sell." And I said, "Perfect." And so I literally went to my family, friends, neighborhood, everyone I knew, and I started them on different vitamins. people were having trouble with sleep, I would tell them what to do. If they were trying to lose weight, I would tell them which
Okay,
supplements.
you're practicing medicine as a teenager.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy because I literally made a list of people and would try to get them to buy more than a month, and then I would have them on a list so that every month I knew that they needed more pills. And before you knew it, I had a nice customer base that was bringing in a certain amount of cash every month, and then on top of that, obviously, I still worked for my business
Yeah.
for my boss. But for a 16-year-old, this was amazing to have cash coming in.
And you bought a car, and yeah, that's freedom, right? It was freedom
Yeah.
to you, I'm sure. Well,
Yeah.
so tell us about the road to medical school, because so you went in the armed forces to get your undergraduate degree. Did you stay there to get your MD?
No, I had the vision of realizing that if for every year that they would pay, I would owe them a year. So I stuck to the reserves. I was tempted in having a full ride, but then I thought I knew me, my entrepreneur brain, I would fail in the US government saying, I couldn't do anything outside the box. And I was such an out of the box thinker that I knew back then that I had to go private. So as tempting as it was, I was to kind of explain the thinking outside the box. While I was in med school, I could realize I didn't have the resources, so I basically would reach out to all the book publishers and say, "Hey, if I find errors in your book, can I get that book for free?" And fast forward, all the book publishers were sending me free books, and I was able to edit them, fix them, and I literally had free books for med school. It was
Well,
pretty cool. And
yeah,
then
that's amazing. But I have some experience with medical school because my daughter and son-in-law went to medical school at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, and it's not like there's scholarships for being smart, because they're all, you know, it's so expensive.
yeah.
So how did you fund your education?
I was blessed in that the local bookstore, I created my own, it was called Dr. Castro's Corner, and I was able to pick different books that I thought were key for different subjects. And as a result, I was able to um, basically have my own bookstore corner, and the manager would pay me for keeping up with that bookshelf or so forth. And then also simultaneously, I was learning so much about these subjects that I thought, let me write cliff notes. And so I started selling cliff notes to my colleagues and creating books, and those books were selling inside the med school, so that was bringing in revenue.
That's amazing. I
And
just think
thank you.
that's so inventive.
Yeah, and then the book companies were loving me. They're like, Harvey, we are just gonna keep having you in focus groups. So back then, the big thing was the Palm Pilot, and I was like, hey, the future is gonna be digital books, and we really need to invest in this thing called ebooks. And fast forward, I remember being part of the different ecosystems, telling them how to promote, how to sell. So then that started bringing me some more revenue. So it was kind of fun in that I was helping people, helping my colleagues, but then obviously helping myself because I needed money for college. And then whatever I couldn't get the rest, I would just get government loans. Um,
Yeah.
so.
So, when you left medical school, or toward the end of medical school, there's this big thing called match day. So, what was that like for you? Did you know what branch of medicine you wanted to go into at that time?
I fell in love with emergency medicine. At the time, I had just got married, and my first unborn son at that time was going to be a premature baby. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I go ER, the places that I was going to likely match were outside of my radius of my family. And I thought, let me do a transition year. Let me do family medicine because I know I can get that here locally. And then fast forward, he ended up not being born premature and then ended up going to term. But then by then I missed match day. So I had to do a year of family medicine and then apply for ER, and I got emergency medicine.
Yeah.
And I was really, really stoked about having that 1 year family because it gave me a nice broad approach. But then when I did ER, it was very focused. So I was able to have both brains going, like having that concierge family
Yeah,
approach, but then emergency medicine when you don't really have much time that you have to make decisions quickly.
very quickly. My daughter's an ER physician too. I told
Okay, so you can relate.
Yeah, but my son-in-law, his residency was a year longer than hers. He's a neurologist, but he had to do a year of general medicine first and
Yes.
then go into the neurologies. And then, you know what? There's never an end to the education road, it seems like, for physicians, because then they do fellowships and then they get specialized and specialized. But
Yeah.
it is a big deal to be a doctor. Not very many people can do it because, number one, they don't have the mental capacity to do it or the ability to handle the kind of pressure that physicians experience, particularly in the emergency room. But it's emergency medicine is also appealing because, number one, you have shifts. You know when you're on and you know when you're off. Um, and also because those of you who are really quick thinkers can put that into practice, and you're doing more than setting broken arms, you're
Yeah.
saving people's lives.
Yeah.
So where did you practice medicine when you were through with your training?
Yeah, I moved to Dallas, Texas, and I never left Dallas. I love Dallas. I feel like it's another melting pot. Was able to really do a lot. And here in Texas, I was blessed again in that they had this thing called freestanding ERs. Think of it as if you cut out your emergency room and plop it in the middle of suburban America. That's basically what a freestanding is.
Mm.
It has all the capability of an emergency room. It just doesn't have,
Doesn't
being
have
able
the
to
hospital around it, right?
doesn't have the hospital around it. And
Yeah.
so I call it a blessing because at the time I was working for a big hospital system, and I jokingly say I was called into the principal's office because I was ordering too many CAT scans. I was spending too much time with my patients. And even though I was within the average, actually I was a little above the average from my colleagues, they wanted me to see more, and order less. And I thought, this is kind of backwards from what I signed up to do. I signed up to help, to do this amazing, passionate doctor that's giving, and then to be told, no, you got to spend less time, you got to do less for them. And so fast forward, I thought, I need to get out of this hospital system. And being the out of the box thinker I am, I thought, I'm just going to start my own emergency room. And so I had heard this thing called freestanding market. And I thought, let me create these. So I created about 20 of them. 8 of them I packaged into a brand, and then basically started my own billing, my own staffing, and my own emergency rooms. And then I really took the practice of medicine in a different light. I said to my doctors, instead of hurrying, you'll get in trouble for being too fast. I want you to take more time with patients. Anything that the hospital is telling you to do, I really want you to do the opposite. I want you to spend more time. I want you to focus on the patient care. I don't want you to worry about the money. And then the money will take care of itself.
Mhm.
And so people love coming to our emergency rooms. It grew really big, and I was able to sell it, get out of it, in the sense that move on to the next stage of my life.
Well, I'm very intrigued by what you're doing with AI in the healthcare system. So, how did you make that turn from emergency physician to working in artificial intelligence?
Ironically, it goes to this iPhone. The first iPhone was out. I'm literally coding a patient in the emergency room. This was roughly when the iPhone 1 had come out. And I had told the nurse, hey, we need to start an epi drip. And we were going through the doses and whatnot. And she's like, let me get a textbook. I just want to verify everything. And I'm looking at her like, there's got to be something that's faster. And I'm looking at the iPhone, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to teach myself how to program. I'm going to create the first app that's called IV Meds. And I actually released it within months, went viral all over the world, did really well. And
So,
as a
is
result,
it a guideline for
yeah,
in the
it,
emergency room what
yeah,
dosages are
yeah,
appropriate for?
you literally just tap the phone, and it literally gives you the dose and how much and what rate you should give to the patient. It's like 3 taps. And so it went really well. As a result, I created about 40 more apps in healthcare and using technology. And then I give that backstory because November 2022, I'm playing with ChatGPT, and I think, holy cow, this is going to change medicine. And I got so excited that I went into I'm in my office right now. I went out of the office. I went to my mom, to my, sorry, my wife's, and I said,
You
hey,
don't
I'm gonna
confuse your wife and mother, right?
no, because I also, the second call was to my mother.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I'm going to do this thing called ChatGPT in healthcare. And my wife's like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what ChatGPT is. And I said, well, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to explain how to do it. And within 3 weeks, I had it on the market, and just telling people about it. And it was so funny because anyone I would talk to, doctors, friends at that time, no one knew what I was talking about. But I was like, look, there's this thing called ChatGPT. And if we can use this in healthcare, we're going to literally save lives. So fast forward over the year 2023, I had multiple organizations around the world asking me to come speak, talk, and then that ended up morphing into me learning more about the science and creating my own AI tools, kind of like I did with the iPhone, with AI in healthcare. And so now I'm teaching on one side, but then on the other side, I'm actually creating AI applications for healthcare and for regular businesses that are not in healthcare.
So tell us, how are you using it in healthcare? You gave us that insight into the first app, but what else are you doing with it?
You know, several things. There's obviously different flavors, just like we can drive a Ford, we can drive a Mercedes. Same thing with AI. There's different types, and different vehicles will create different goals for us. And so, what I'm literally doing is showing hospital systems, doctors, some of the low hanging fruit, some of the things that we can start doing now. Give you an example. I love this example. I use it a lot, in fact. But imagine trying to speak to a child and telling them they have asthma. And normally we give them discharge papers, we type it up and say, here you go. And you really give it to the parents, and then you do your best to teach the child, but that's it. But what if we used AI to create the right words to speak to a 5-year-old, to not only use the adult words, but use the language of a 5-year-old, but then take those words, put it into, say, a Dolly or Midjourney, something that creates the art, and then now give the child a coloring book. Instead of giving them words, they're having a coloring book that has the same concepts of what the words you're trying to say, and then make it really simple. Take that to another level, create a video discharge summary where now it's an animation. Maybe it's their favorite cartoon. Maybe it's a voice cloned of
I
that.
know they can do voice cloning. You can clone yourself,
Exactly.
and
And
which
yeah,
is
and
a
so that's
little
what I'm.
creepy, but I like the way you're using it. I mean, everybody's scared of AI, and it's maturing, right? But we need to tell success stories about how it's being used.
Yes. So that's what I'm doing. I'm helping different departments, in the pediatric space, helping them with developing different cheaper alternatives or better discharge instructions. Obviously, the better the discharge instruction, the more likely the child or the person's going to comply with their medication or the recommendations. How often do you go to the doctor and you come out of it not knowing what was said or really understanding it? And my point now is, let's leverage AI in those discharge instructions, as I'm giving you an example, to get better discharge instructions. Knowing ER from your family, you'll relate to, or I know your daughter will obviously relate to, speaking to people from different cultures, different languages, and how tough it is. Imagine being able to use AI to convert my words and give
Into
the
it.
right examples to their culture, to their way to think, to say the words how it's said. Here in the United States, we say football and we think American football, but you say that same football anywhere outside the US and they think soccer.
Soccer, yeah,
Simple stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. Um, I like what you said about like better discharge procedures and instructions, because if you're in the ER or in a hospital setting, it's usually high anxiety, right? And your listening skills are not really what they need to be in some of these situations. So, and to be able to translate in things into a child's language, because anything like asthma or diabetes, childhood diabetes, that patient, even though they're 5, they need to start learning how to take care of themselves, because it's a lifelong, process to manage your ailment. So, how else are you using it? Can you tell us some more success stories?
Yeah, so I'm helping with the science portion of it. As you said, people are scared of it. There are some things that we need to share with patients and with hospital systems, and so I'm encouraging on both ends of the equation. On the hospital and doctor side, I'm encouraging them to have like food warnings equivalent white information, so that it's on their hospital walls to say, hey, these are the ways that we're using AI, because a lot of people don't realize some of their hospital systems are using it. The other is just educating the hospital system and the physicians. If they don't know this tool, they're going to fear it. They're not going to want to use it. So why not help them create educational tools, educational platforms? That way the physicians can understand, and obviously the nurses and frontline workers. And so now they're looking at this technology to help them. One of the biggest things right now in healthcare is obviously burnout. And with so many professionals leaving the profession, I'm worried personally because in the near future, we're not going to have enough healthcare professionals to
I think we
take care
don't
of us.
now. I think we don't have enough now.
No, we don't, but it's going to get worse.
Mhm.
And my biggest worry is if we don't do something now, then we're going to have more people dying in the emergency room. We're going to have people waiting forever for care. And I really think AI is going to be one of those tools to help us. I
Yeah.
see a future of robots having AI in their eyes, and me having a robot next to me and saying, okay, let's look at Nancy and what is her hemoglobin A1C? What is her blood pressure? Her voice has changed, and AI can detect, maybe she's got early depression. The robot looking at you walking and saying, oh, her walking is off, therefore she may be having XY disease syndrome, or maybe her hip is out or not doing well. So I really think those types of tools, AI, robots, all of the above, is going to help us in healthcare.
Well, in diagnostics,
Oh yeah.
because I'm always astounded at the amount of information a physician is expected to know and remember. And it's volumes and volumes and volumes of things. That's why doctors specialize, right? So they only
Yeah.
have their little slice of things that they have to remember. If you ask my neurologist, son-in-law to deliver a baby, he can do it, but he sure doesn't want to,
Yeah.
But so where do you see this going in terms? I mean, we're calling you Dr. GPT now because you're so entrenched in it. How are you going to how will you socialize this amongst the medical professionals, and how do you see them embracing and starting to instead of fearing it, use it to their advantage?
I think it's different steps. Like you said, you mentioned predictive analytics. There's ways of increasing the accuracy of these models for the hospital system so that when they're discharging a patient, the AI predictive analytics can say, yeah, this person can go home or this person may need to stay. Saving lives in the sense that there's AI in radiology that can help be that extra brain looking at the x-ray or the CAT scan or MRI saying, hey, no, there's early breast cancer warnings here that you may not catch with the naked eye. Maybe the digital portion will start seeing trends. And so I call it, my favorite phrase is, let's look at AI as human plus AI is better than just AI alone or just human alone. Because I think together we're going to get more. Obviously, AI is going to make mistakes. It's going to hallucinate. It's going to do all these negative things. But if the human is in the loop to make sure that it's checking it, verifying it, then I really think we're going to be able to get more out of it.
So I have a question to ask you because I understand Chat GPT at a novice level. It's a large language model, and so when you start going to Chat GPT for medical answers, how does that information, the correct information, get populated in the first place?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. And that's my bigger worry. This sounds horrible for me to say, but I'm not too worried about the physicians because physicians and healthcare professionals have a license by their state boards
Right.
that have verified them and saying, yes, they know the knowledge. And they should look at AI as just another tool. Just like they order a lab, an x-ray, CAT scan, and they're getting different data, they ultimately make that decision. My worry is more to your point that you just made is patience. How does a
Yeah, it's like
patient
people Googling their symptoms and coming up with their own diagnosis, right? Yeah.
exactly? And I'm very worried about that because what if, back then it was called Dr. Google, now it's Dr. ChatGPT or Dr. GPT. And I'm really worried that if they, especially more outside of the United States where they can literally walk to a pharmacy and grab whatever medication, here at least that one portion doctors have to write a prescription to do it. But if ChatGPT told you had X syndrome and you just go to the pharmacy and self-medicate, I mean, the medication may be wrong, the diagnosis could be wrong, the mental anguish could be all incorrect that you add it to yourself by not knowing. And so to answer your question, most people don't know this, but what they did is when ChatGPT was trained, they were paying people in Africa about $1 an hour to basically put thumbs up or thumbs down. If that person was a doctor, great. But if it wasn't, then that person was looking at the output saying, yeah, this sounds great to me, and let's give it a thumbs up, and was reinforcing possibly the wrong data. And
Mm,
so I'm very worried that we really need to have a healthcare focused GPT, but not just healthcare. It needs to be individual specialties. So you mentioned we've been talking about ER, but if I were to reinforce a dermatology, unless it's a dermatology emergency, I have no business in it. We
right.
need to make sure that we have the right doctors reinforcing the right data.
Yeah. So there's still some work to be done by the
For sure.
medical community to um,
For sure.
invest in a GPT that's strictly medical based along the lines of whatever discipline. Well, so here's a question for you, because when you were telling me about India and Africa and all that kind of stuff, I was thinking, you know, our healthcare is much more advanced than the third world countries. How can how do you see it being used in those regions where they don't necessarily have doctors or the same medical training that we do in our Western world?
No, this is a great question. In fact, there's 2 points I want to say. Number one, each region of the country needs to create their own GPT equivalent. Just because it's US data, that doesn't mean it applies in India and Africa per se, because it's a different population, different studies, different outcomes, different ways of looking at
Different
it. So
illnesses. Yeah.
yeah. And so that's number one. Number two, how can these countries use it? I predict, and I do a talk on this subject. I call it a chat GPT, the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Yeah.
and unknown. Um, anyway, what I talk about is I foresee a future where I would not be surprised if we start seeing case uses that really blow our mind up in a way, in a positive way, in West Africa or South America before we see it in the United States due to the risk benefits analysis. For example, if there's a village in Africa that has zero access to healthcare, then the pros versus cons using AI has changed. If
Mhm.
they were to use, say, Elon Musk satellites and put a mobile unit and then put a trailer with computers that they're able to be voice activated to be able to interact with the people, and then have, say, a physician assistant in that area that now can give access to healthcare to all these people, that would happen. That's not going to happen here in the United States
Right,
because
because we have a
reg-
different societal structure. Mhm.
exactly. But I do see, and I have talked to different governments already outside of the United States that have approached me about asking questions and how they can use it. And I can tell you that's coming. Scenarios like that, where pros versus cons, where legislation won't allow certain things to happen here in the United States, other countries are going to allow it just because they don't have access. And this is the only access they'll be able to have towards healthcare, which is quite interesting.
Do you see it being instrumental in drug development?
Oh my God, yes. In fact, AI can decrease the cost of medication for development for as much as 90%. So if something costs you $1 billion to develop, maybe now it costs you 100 million. And let me give you an example.
Mhm.
There's certain rare diseases around the world that unfortunately pharmaceutical companies are saying this is going to
It's
cost us
not
so
worth
much
their time to
to
develop a drug?
exactly. But now, if we're using AI and you decrease the cost by 90%, there might be some things that they say, you know what? Now we can address these issues and now we can help people. And then that's the part that makes me excited. Um, Google did something called AlphaFold, and what they did is they were able to map all the different 3D structures of proteins, and they literally just gave that database away to anyone that wants to use it. The reason that makes me excited as a doctor is if I'm developing drugs and I have, let's say, the roadmap of what's out there, then it's a lot easier for me to figure out what drugs will work with those proteins and open up that lock key effect to open up, you know, possibly a message of helping diabetes or
Yeah.
increasing insulin, so forth. So I really think humanity is about to see all these amazing accomplishments through AI.
You know what I'm thinking here? I'm sitting here thinking about that horrible um, ruse about Theranos and the blood testing and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering if AI can actually do something like that, where with a single drop of blood, it can analyze. And I think that was for diabetics, or it was supposed to be, can analyze the blood and come up with a resolution.
Yeah, there's so much coming with these different algorithms. Honestly, it's just all about using the data. depending on what you're trying to do. Your example would be analyzing the blood, and the answer is yes. There's just so much. What comes to mind to me is precision medicine. Um, Imagine if, let's just say diabetes, since you mentioned it, if I could come up with an insulin that was specific to you, and therefore I'm not giving it the same insulin to different people. And now maybe I don't need, let's say, 10 units. Maybe I only need 1 unit because it's so specific to you. These are the type of things that AI is going to start bringing to us.
That's fabulous. That's incredible. So, are you still practicing in the ER?
Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm more doing telemedicine, and now I'm really focusing on helping startups around the world, how to use AI in healthcare, and I'm also creating my own AI applications.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because you're way into it. So you can create your own GPTs, right?
Yeah.
So,
In
what?
fact, I'm gonna interrupt you and tell you this is kind of geeky, but in the next couple of weeks, I basically took all my books. I have over 18 books.
Mhm.
I put them into my own private GPT, and I'm gonna allow people to have a conversation with me through my GPT, so they can talk
That's
to me
amazing.
about any of my old books, any of my interviews. This interview, if you give me the transcript later, I'll add it to the GPT, and then anyone can have a talk with our
Yeah,
conversation today.
that's so great. So, who are your customers?
That's a good question. Depending on what vertical I'm doing is my customer. So when I'm consulting hospital systems, it's definitely the hospital system, the CEO, the C-suite. If I'm doing education in the hospitals, then it's more the professional teams that are there, the nurses, the doctors, the front office.
What does the
If
hospital hire you then?
Yeah,
Or yeah,
yeah,
okay.
the hospital will hire me to talk to them, and it's kind of like two flavors: what the administration needs are, and then what are the hospital needs. So then I'll do a variation of each one. And then when I'm creating products, then depending on which product I'm creating, it may be for patients, but it may be just for people to be more efficient using AI. So then I'm creating some products for them.
That's great. So, what's on the horizon for you?
Honestly, I'd say I'm having fun. Having fun giving talks around the world. I'm really enjoying creating
Mm.
different
You're
types of
you are
tools to
a
help people.
creator. I mean, that's so clear.
Thank you. I
Starting with
love
your
what I'm
cleaning
doing.
vitamin business, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's what's next for me. I'm writing more books. I'm proud to say that in February I wrote the first book on how to use the Apple Vision Pro in healthcare. That came out in February, literally days after the unit had come out. I'm also been blessed in that I was invited to be an advisor for the country Singapore.
Wow,
So now I'll be traveling to Asia a few times a year to consult
congratulations.
the country how to use digital health in Singapore. So that's really exciting for me.
That's amazing. Well, obviously, you're using your influence to impact the world in a very positive way, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today, and on Masters of Influence, of which you are. Um, how what in your dream world, what would you want to be known for?
Honestly, I'd want to be known for just helping. That's it, just helping, even if it's just one person, being that positive light. That's why I went into medicine to help others. I was so scarred by the healthcare system that I wanted to be that light, that person to say, you know what, I had a good experience with that doctor.
Yeah, well, I know you're making lots and lots of people have good experiences with healthcare now, and it's only going to get a broader, broader footprint in that. So, to wrap it up, Dr. GPT, I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions to help the audience get to know you in a little bit different way. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Summer in Dallas? It's really hot there.
Yeah, I'm gonna joke with you, and I'm gonna tell you what I told my wife. She's Caucasian, and I'm like, hey, my roots are Latin, so I'm used to being the heat. I like warmth. She's originally from Sweden, so she's
Oh,
and has this mixture of European in her. So she's loves the cold, loves the winter, and so we always joke that I'd love to go into the heat, and she'd rather be in the winter.
oh, that's so funny. Okay, Netflix or movie theater?
Oh, I love movie theaters.
Yeah, yeah. I know I missed them during the pandemic. Casual night in or fancy night out?
Casual. Although before it used to be the fancy, but
It
now I really
changes
enjoy
over time, doesn't it? Yeah.
the older I get, the more casual
The more,
I'm becoming.
the more like maybe home on the couch, right? Exactly.
Yes.
So, window or aisle seat?
Oh, aisle all the
Are-
way.
yeah. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I used to be a night owl. Now I'm more of a morning person.
Yeah. So you have told us about so many abilities that you have. What is something you cannot do?
Ooh, that's a hard one. That is a hard one. I cannot speak more than 3 languages. Um,
Darn. Yeah, yeah. But you can
yeah,
get a GPT to do that for you, right?
exactly,
You can figure
exactly.
that out. Well,
Uh,
yeah.
Thank you. No, all I was gonna say is I pride myself in that any obstacle that I see, anything that I can't do, I get obsessed with, and I just jump in and I try my best to teach myself that. And
That's
that's just
awesome.
a principle of my life. So anything that's I want to do, I just say no. I can't tell myself I can't. I'm gonna tell myself I can.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time again, doctor, and to our audience for your attention. Um, if our audience wants to find you, they want to connect and learn more, where can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest is to go to any major
Mhm.
social media and type in Harvey Castro
Okay.
MD as in medical doctor. And I'm on LinkedIn
Mhm.
mostly. I joke around and say I lived on LinkedIn. So if you friend me there, I'm sure we will have
Yeah.
a conversation.
Incredible. Well, if you or someone you know wants to write a book, you can find my contact information in the LinkedIn profile where there's a link to schedule a strategy session with me. Thank you for your time. You've been watching Masters of Influence with your host, Nancy Erickson. See you next time.